What's going on, guys? Matt here, back again with another video. We're nearing the start of the NBA season. I thought it'd be great to go through my personal investments for this season. Keep in mind, if I don't mention anyone, there's a chance I'm fine with my position on them and not wanting to buy more. Some examples being Luka, Jason Tatum, SGA. But if you guys have not seen some of my investing strategy, I'm more of a short and medium-term investor, so you will see more of the hot prospects than the established veterans or Hall of Famers, as the market's more reactive with them, and I feel like I've got a better opportunity to make money with them. But the main reason I do want to do this is to stay transparent on my position. I also think it will be fun to reflect back at the end of the season and see how I went. I will hide a few things though, like how much I've invested in each player and specific cards I've purchased, but you can note the latter if you do watch my mail days. All right, let's run through my 2020 to 21 investments before we get into my 2021 to 22 investments. Now, I don't obviously have any proof of this. I just kept a list before the season last year, but as my YouTube channel was made in January, wasn't able to highlight who I invested in. But yeah, thought it'd be fun to just say how it all went through, and yeah, just be a bit more transparent and say how they all went. So first up, DeAndre Ayton. The start of the season last year was very disappointing. I did see a few lists or a few posts on Facebook of people saying that he should probably be a sell at the moment. He was a bit of a bust. I think people were expecting more with the pairing of Chris Paul, but he showed a lot in the playoffs, and he was actually one of the best players, almost like a Bam Adebayo from the previous year's playoffs. But unfortunately for me, on DeAndre Ayton, even though I did buy a fair few of his cards, I actually sold most of them in the first round of the playoffs, unfortunately, because I thought that would be his peak where he played quite well. But as we got to the second round and the third round, he actually stepped up his game a little bit more. But yeah, obviously got beaten by Giannis in there. But yeah, with DeAndre Ayton, unfortunately sold him a bit too early, so I made a little bit of money, but probably not as much as I should have. Next up, Brandon Ingram. So I'm a massive Brandon Ingram fan. I really like the way he plays. He's a great scorer. I love the pairing with Zion. Does bring a lot of eyes. Maybe not the best as a team fit, so who knows in a few years' time whether one of them gets traded or even this year, because it really... I think they need some team success soon, as we'll run through in my later investments. But Brandon Ingram didn't really build too much from his most improved season, unfortunately. And yeah, I'll brush up on him a little bit more in my investments later on, because he's going to be in my 2021 to 22 investments. Next up, bit of a funny one, Ben Simmons. So I actually had him on my Instagram in November, if you guys followed me back then, but I had him as my favorite investment of that season. I thought the Doc Rivers signing to the 76ers was going to be great for him. Thought they would utilise a pick and roll with Ben Simmons being the ball carrier, but it didn't work out too well. Had statistically one of his worst seasons in the playoffs. He really went to crap. And yeah, his cards have really gone downhill. So this one's been a bit of a bad one for me. I've flipped a few cards because in Australia we do have a bit of a better market for Ben Simmons stuff compared to America. But I still am holding some cards, holding out hope that he does turn it around, because he just needs to get the mental game switched on, and he could be one of the best players in the league. So right now, a bit of a loss for me with Ben Simmons, and yeah, that is Benny Simmons. So moving on, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was great last season. Very efficient player. Really liked the way he played last season. He was just injured throughout the season, which is a bit unfortunate, but was really efficient, shooting 51% from the field, 42% from the three-point line, and hitting just under 24 points a game, under 5 rebounds, and just under 6 assists. So that's ridiculous. I think he could have been a borderline all-star if he played a few more games. I think people look at Ja Morant, and Ja Morant's a great player and everything, but Shai on his team has been playing really well and playing much more efficiently. So Shai is, I think, still trading at a cheaper price than Ja Morant, but I've still got a lot of my Shais, and I'm holding him a bit more longer term because I do like him a lot. So he won't be featuring my 2021 to 22 investments. I do feel like I've got enough of him. But yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a player I do like a lot. Next up, Jaylen Brown. So Jaylen Brown had a great start to the season last season. Was almost like an MVP candidate. First month of the season, averaged 28 points per game, dropped to around 27 points per game, and then Tatum came back and he pretty much dropped after that. But he finished with averages of just under 25 points per game. Really great player. I do like him. I will brush up on him a little bit more in the next segment because he is going to be featuring as an investment. But yeah, I was big on him last season. Next up, Wendell Carter Jr. So Wendell Carter Jr., bit of an annoying one for me. I had him more as a budget buy. Hopefully he was going to do well, but unfortunate Chicago, he couldn't build on his season, and unfortunately with each season he's gone on, he seems to be quite stagnant. But looking at the NBA preseason, he actually looks like not a bad buy right now. He looks like he's slotted into that starting position. I think as a budget buy, if you're willing to take a punt on him, I think that wouldn't be a bad buy with Wendell Carter Jr. But I've got enough cards of him to hold out into this season, so I wouldn't be buying any more. I sold a couple off at a loss, but just to keep some money liquid. And yeah, I think if you're after some Wendell Carter Jr. and you don't have any, it's not a bad buy, but would I buy any more myself? Probably not. And yeah, moving on to Mitchell Robinson. So Mitchell Robinson, a bit unfortunate, was a per 36 monster in his first 2 seasons, but unfortunately this last season was injury riddled, and as a starter couldn't really perform as well. But I think it was more just because he had 2 massive injuries which put him out for long periods, and yeah, he didn't play too much of the season, so a little bit annoying with Mitchell Robinson. Played 31 games, averaged 8 points, 8 rebounds. He actually dropped down in his blocks. He averaged 1.5 blocks per game in 27 minutes of playing time, compared to his rookie season where he averaged 2.4 blocks in 20 minutes of playing time. So I don't get how that correlates, but I do know the Knicks fans are keen on Mitchell Robinson returning to the starting lineup and being their center. They really do think he's going to be make a massive impact on their team. For me, I haven't sold many of my Mitchell Robinsons. Again, I've been holding him through this season, so I'm hoping he can show out. But if I did try to sell him right now, they'd probably be at a loss. So I'm really banking on him to hopefully play well this season and hopefully make my 2020 to 21 investments look a little bit better. And these last 2 are more of my budget buys from last season who I was picking up cheap, and they both did quite well for me. Malik Beasley, after being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves from the Denver Nuggets, averaged 20 points per game or 21 points per game. Bought a fair few cards of him, and yeah, in his season at Minnesota, he averaged just under 20 points per game. Again, was out with injuries. I also think he was he arrested then? I can't remember if he was already arrested, but yeah, he was able to flip most of my cards of Malik Beasley and turn a tidy profit with him. So really happy with Malik Beasley. I don't know if he'll be starting this season, so I wouldn't be buying into him right now. The starting lineup for the Minnesota Timberwolves looks quite deep at the moment, but yeah, I'm happy with my investment in Malik Beasley. And Robert Williams III, really happy with this investment as well that I did last season. Did quite well. Was able to buy silver prisms for $5, autos for $5. It was quite crazy. I sort of wish I bought more. You always sort of, with these sorts of budget buys, that when they do well, like you do hope that you do wish that you bought more. But yeah, you can't always do that because for every player that does do well, there are always those players that don't. So with Robert Williams III, I was really happy with him. He played great. He's going to be starting this season. Hopefully is going to show out this season and ball out and get his blocks up, be one of the best blockers in the game, really. So yeah, hopefully his field goal percentage for his career is 72%, so that's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, hopefully this season as a starter, he can play quite well. And yeah, I'm holding still a few cards of his. I don't know, I'd probably be selling a few this season again because I can't see what his ceiling would be. I can't see him being a 20 point per game scorer, unfortunately, but more just an athletic big man who can run the floor and block shots. All right, let's go into the 2021 to 22 investments. And the first player that we'll be speaking about today is Zion Williamson. So I think Zion is a great investment. Barring injury, I think he'll be up there with Luka as the 2 to lead the next generation of players. He's sort of in that Giannis realm, but the only annoying thing was, as of the time of recording, as I just said, barring injury as well, he's got no timeline on his return with a fracture in his foot, and the Pelicans are being a bit hush-hush about it, which is a bit annoying. So I'm a little bit worried, but I'm still confident. Just looking at his second season, which was quite impressive. And yeah, in his second season, he averaged 27 points and 7 rebounds on 61% field goal percentage, which is ridiculous. Just remember, he's also very young. He's only 20 years old. So, worst case, he does have to miss this year. He misses this year. He'll be starting next season at 21 years old. It's ridiculous how good he is at the age he's at. And I think another thing as well with Zion that we do have to note is that his team success will be crucial in the next period, because at least with Luka, in comparing him to Luka, Luka's had some team success in the playoffs, been able to get his team into the playoffs and have some great playoff series. So we need to see Zion make a playoff series and make an impact as well. But for me, Zion is a massive long-term target for mine. I don't really like saying long-term for a lot of players unless I do think they'll be all-time greats, but I am quite bullish with Zion Williamson. Moving on to the second player, Jaylen Brown. As I just noted before, my 2020 to 21 investments, I'm going to go in on Jaylen Brown again. Made me a bit of money last season. I'm going to go in and again. and buy a little bit more. I really do like him because I do think he's undervalued when you compare him to a player or his own teammate, Jason Tatum. He's running at half the price of Tatum. I'm not saying he should be equal, but maybe around 20 to 30% less. And last season when I said I had the same sort of theory with Jaylen Brown, he was less than half of Jason Tatum's price, and after that spectacular start of the season, like I was saying before, he was able to close in and get to around 20% less. But yeah, he's now back to being half of the price. I do like Boston. They looked primed to make a run this season. They have a deeper team with Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson on the bench probably this time round. But with Jaylen Brown, I do hope he can have some more growth this season, and yeah, be hopefully a 1B to Jason Tatum. Probably not. He'll probably just still be that second option on the Boston Celtics. I'd say his floor is a little bit higher than Jason Tatum in terms of what he can produce at his worst, but Jason Tatum's ceiling is probably a bit higher than Jaylen Brown. But I do like Jaylen Brown. I do have some Jason Tatum, so I'm probably not going to buy more. I'm more likely going to look into Jaylen Brown a bit more. Third target, I'll be going after Brandon Ingram. So yeah, a little bit of an annoying one. He's with Zion being out, but he might get a little bit of more usage with no Zion. I think that'll be quite interesting to start off the season. Again, he's also very young, 24 years old, young core with Zion. I think the scary thing is that potentially if the Pelicans don't win in the next couple of years, one of the two, and most likely Brandon Ingram, will be traded. But I would like to see him be a number one option. I do think he's a great scorer, and he's still developing as a player with that length as well. And yeah, he didn't really build on his most improved season, unfortunately. Averages stayed around relatively the same, but I do think he's undervalued when you compare him to other players in the 2016 NBA draft class. An example being Jamal Murray, who is, we don't know his timetable for return. I haven't been able to look that up, but potentially might not be able to play this season coming off the ACL. But looking at Brandon Ingram's Prism PSA 10 rookie card, going for $130 US, Jamal Murray is going for $200 US, and you've got the potential of Brandon Ingram playing well this season. And I think Jamal Murray being $70 more, being out for the season potentially is it doesn't make sense for me. So I think Brandon Ingram has to come up or Jamal Murray has to come down. There is going to be issues with the ball being shared around in New Orleans with Jonas Valanciunas being on the team, Devontae Graham now being on the team, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well starting. So I think with Zion being out, they'll be good for the first part of the season. But when Zion returns, it'll be interesting to see who drops off. I think it'll be Devontae. But I do like him more medium term in the 1 to 3 year range. I can see him blossoming into one of the best scorers in the league with his length eventually. He's getting there. I just hope he makes some strides in his and some improvement as well in his game, because last season was quite disappointing, even though he was still averaging the same amount as his most improved season. Fourth player, so we're getting to more the prospecting sort of players, but OG Anunoby, aka Ogugwa Anunoby, but yeah, this is a massive one for me. So no Siakam for the first month of the season. Showed a lot in the preseason. I've watched a fair few of his games. His shot creating ability is a bit better. Ball handling still a little bit suspect, and he does look a little bit lost when he's shooting the ball up the court when he's rushed and pressured. But he is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Very versatile, can guard 1 through 5. I think he's got a comparison to Kawhi Leonard, and I think it's very close. I'm not saying he will be Kawhi Leonard, but a comparison to Kawhi Leonard. Younger Kawhi Leonard is a great thing. And I don't know if you guys know this, but when the Raptors did lose Kawhi, a lot of the organization weren't really panicking because they were looking at OG Anunoby as that future Kawhi, because OG Anunoby didn't actually play that playoff series, or more the final series when the Toronto Raptors ended up winning the championship. He was actually out injured. So very interesting with OG Anunoby. I think with Siakam out, he's going to be the number one option. Gary Trent Jr. has already come out and said that he'll be the number one option. And he averaged 18 points in his last 20 games of the season when he was given a bigger role and more touches. So again, I do like OG more medium term, 1 to 3 years. And I'm very intrigued to see how his development will go. Fifth player up, Darius Garland. So Darius Garland, actually quite surprisingly, has had a really disappointing preseason. For me, I'm being a Houston fan. I've seen JB Bickerstaff coach at Houston before, and I wasn't a big fan of him. And watching him in at Cleveland, I know the team structure there isn't the greatest. They've got Sexton, Okoro, and Garland. I don't think that starting lineup's going to work because Okoro has to guard the taller players, and I don't think it's going to work as well. You've got Jarrett Allen as well, and Mobley. I mean, two big guys there. That's not going to work either. So I think they've almost got to trade Sexton, put Okora at the 2, and then I don't know what they do with the big guys, but with Darius Garland, he had a disappointing preseason. I mean, it's a little bit to do with him, but I think more so with the coaching and the lineups out there. Sexton was trying to create too much and handle too much of the ball, and I think Garland needed a bit more opportunity. He also needed to have some more confidence in his shot and shoot more as well, but Darius Garland had a great finish to the season last year, this year actually, but he averaged 20 just under 21 points per game and just over 7 assists in March. The Cavaliers do have more trust in Garland by the looks of things, because Sexton's name always comes up in trade talks. Garland seems like that untouchable piece, but who knows? After this year, you even heard that Steph Curry call him a flat-out star. He's a very shifty player, and I think another year of development in this full preseason could see him being one of the best scorers in the league, hopefully. So for me, you can have him as a bit of a short-term flip, but I would have him more medium-term, 1 to 3 years. I think this season he might show out and become a 20-point per game scorer, but I do want to see him a little bit more longer than that and see what he can develop into. 6th player, so Daniel Gafford, really sneaky under the radar sort of investment for me. I think for me, like I said before, that Robert Williams was a massive investment of mine last season. I think Gafford's going to be my Time Lord sort of investment this season. Really athletic big man who is a great defender. He's really cheap at the moment. I really think he can blossom into a consistent double-double player and hopefully one of the best defenders in the league. Per 36 minutes has really great stats, always doesn't translate as we saw with Mitchell Robinson last season, but I think Gafford's got that opportunity and he will be the starter this season. I know people thought that, with Montrezl Harrell joining that he might start, but I think they needed a great defender on the floor, and that's going to be Gafford. And even some of the preseason games I was looking at, Gafford's plus-minus was ridiculously good, and then Montrezl Harrell's wasn't that great. And yeah, I think you got to have that balance between the offense and defense. So I think the only scary thing for me is the return of Thomas Bryant. I think the Wizards would probably prioritize defense at the moment, but with Thomas Bryant returning, I don't know what that would do to the lineup for Gafford, whether they both start or whether Bryant comes off the bench. But I think for me, Gafford is more a short-term investment in the 0 to 12 months range. After this season, I don't know if I'd want to be holding on to him a bit longer. Same with the Time Lord. I've got some Time Lords still left, but I think you kind of go through that hype for the one season and then you have to sell off, because long-term, I mean, what can Gafford really become? Not like he's going to become an all-star. He could, but yeah, I wouldn't want to be holding him a bit longer after this season. Next player up, Derek White. So Derek White from the San Antonio Spurs. Look, for me, it's a bit of a last season for my investment in Derek White. My patience is wearing thin. He's getting to that age where he can't really develop anymore, but always seems to start slow during the season and then build into it. I think for me, the massive thing with Derek White as well is he always seems to be injured. So hopefully this season with some consistency and the Spurs lineup opening up a bit more, and if he gets a full preseason and training camp in, he can hopefully have a more consistent scoring season. I've said before that I can see him being a 20-point per game scorer. It might be a bit of it might sound like a bit of a reach, but with the NBA these days, you see more 20-point per game scorers each season. So it wouldn't be a far reach to say that Derek White is a 20-point per game scorer this season. But yeah, it's a completely new team at the Spurs. The offense needs to be generated somewhere. I think him and DeJounte Murray will definitely benefit from it. And yeah, for me with Derek White, it's going to be a short-term sort of thing. 0 to 12 months again. Won't be holding too many after this season, so hopefully he does show out. Moving on to the last player, and that's Kevin Porter Jr. from the Houston Rockets. So again, like Derek White, revamped team at Houston. The offense has to go somewhere. I know a lot of people are really high on him, and being a Houston fan, I want to be biased and say he's going to be the next best thing, but I also have to note that I think he'll be very inefficient this season. He'll be expected to handle the point guard sort of role, and he's never been trialled in that position before, so I definitely expect a lot of turnovers, some poor shots going up. Jalen Green's going to be taking up the bulk of the shots, but I think, with that offense needing to be shared, that he's going to be learning some things in this season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him being like under 40% field goal percentage. So I'm kind of projecting him, and I'm hoping it's not going to be the case that he sort of has that Devontae Graham sort of season a couple of years ago where he averaged 18 points per game, but he was averaging like 38% from the field, and everyone's hyping him up, which does see a boost in their card prices. But for me, that isn't a long-term thing, and as you saw last season with Devontae, he didn't have a great season. So I'm hoping Kevin Porter Jr. can work on that efficiency, but being a starter last season at Houston, he averaged 18 points and 6.5 assists. Hopefully keeps the turnover numbers down. The best thing I saw about Kevin Porter Jr. was that game against Milwaukee last season where he had a 50-point, 11 assist game, and he was actually being guarded by one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA in Drew Holiday. So hopefully he can build on that this season. He learns a fair bit. Being a Houston fan, I'm glad that I have someone to invest in that's not named James Harden. But for me, I'll have him more as a short-term sort of investment in the 0 to 12-month range. You might find that a bit shocking, but I think the hype is so high right now. It wouldn't be a bad idea to sell some. I've already been selling some of my higher-end Kevin Porter Jr.'s, and if I did want to buy in the next off-season at a higher price, then so be it. But I'm willing to sell the hype because I just don't think he's going to be efficient enough to really go up that much in his price. But yeah, that's the summary of my 2021 to 22 investments. Do let me know in the comments who you guys are investing in. Again, this isn't the full list. It's more so the players I'm sort of investing big in, but there are some other players I do have holding a bit more long term, like I said before with SGA, Luka, Tatum, those sorts of players. But I feel like I don't need more of them. So these are more the ones I'm trying to top up a little bit more on. But yeah, I really do appreciate it. If you've made it to the end, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe as always, and I'll see you all in future videos. Take care.